So we have seen comments, multi-line comments and single-line comments we have seen. Now we are going to discuss a very important concept called variables. Variables are programmatic way of handling computer memory. So if you remember our original diagram, the main thing we had was CPU. Then we had the memory right here. So CPU reads and writes from memory. Now, what is the use of this memory? The use of the memory is to be used by different programs which is running in the operating system, which includes our program, the Hello World program we wrote, which has the input and everything. We already use some memory for that execution as well. When we use variable, we will be getting a small chunk from this memory. So this is the memory chip. All this 2 GB RAM, 6 GB RAM. When you buy your phone or your computer, it has the specification of the RAM. That is a RAM we are talking about here, the random access memory. So when we use a variable in a programming language like Python, we will be getting a chunk of or a piece of this RAM. And we will be using that piece for storing data into it. So what is memory? It is the human way of handling computer memory. So it makes our life easier. It is very much like a bag to hold binary numbers. At the end of the day, just like everything else in this digital world, we have only binary numbers. The bag, which is a variable, which is nothing but memory, contains what? Binary numbers. So variable can contain strings, numbers, other variables. So it can contain other variables and references to it. So the variable is very similar to Hermione's bag in Harry Potter. So it's a small bag, it contains a lot of things. Just like that, the variable can be very small when you look at it. The name of the variable can be very small, but it can contain any amount of memory based on the size of it. So we will get to that later. There are many types of variable based on size, type, etc. Normally, the naming of the variable has some restriction in almost all programming language. Almost all of them, including Python, can have letters, numbers, and underscore. In fact, this is kind of my recommendation for naming a variable. We will see that some programming languages allow other characters, and some programming language would like to start the variable name with some special characters, etc. Python doesn't have any such limitation. You can use letters and numbers and underscore. Normally, in almost all the programming language I know, space is not allowed. We'll see that couple of different options for variable naming. Now let's go to Visual Studio Code and see some variable examples and try to store some value into it. So this is our Hello World program. I'm going to remove the comments we were doing before. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable. It is as simple as just naming it in Python. I'm going to name it as testvar1 equal to 100. So in this case, there is a variable I have defined here. The name of the variable is testvar1 and I'm assigning the value 100 to it. So let's try to understand this particular line. We have already seen it before when we did the input operation, but let's pay a little more attention now. So in this case, what we are doing is we are assigning a value 100 into this particular variable. So this is the bag here. Line number 2 is very similar to opening the bag and putting 100 into it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out that 100 and print it. So we have a bag. We have kept some value inside or kept some stuff inside. In this case, it is the 100. And what we're going to do is we're going to take it out. So for that, I'm going to give a print statement, print, then the variable name. So we are expecting it to be printed 100 because we have kept 100 into the bag or the variable. So as usual, I am running the application and we have got 100 printed here. There are a couple of things we need to understand here. So we have taken some memory from the RAM of this laptop, which I'm doing the presentation. So this laptop has some 32 GB RAM or something. Out of that, I have taken some memory to store this 100, and I have assigned or stored 100 into it. And then I have taken that 100 out and printed. So I have created the variable, assigned or returned to it, assigned a value and taken it out. Read, write, all the operations I have performed. So this is a read operation and this is a write operation into the memory. So one thing which we need to understand very clearly, if you're coming from a mathematics background, statement 2 doesn't read test_var1 equal to 100. It is completely wrong. This is not equal to. This is assignment operator. So if you're coming from math background, you might have seen the equations with equal to. Here it has a completely different meaning. So very important to understand. So this is assigning or keeping stuff into the bag. It's as good as you are keeping a $100 bill into your pocket. It's as simple as that. It is not equal to the pocket. $100 bill is not the pocket. So it is not equal to. So very important to understand if you're coming from a math background. Now let's try a couple of different things. I'm going to put 2 here. I'm getting an error. So it is unhappy. This line is already causing problem. So test_var1 is not defined. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm trying to use a variable which is not created. So the memory is not created for this variable. That's what it says. Now, if I move this also to 2, it is happy. So it is created right here. Now, what that means is before using or before reading the value from a variable, we need to create that variable. And line number 2 does that. There are different ways in different programming language to create a variable and allocate memory into it. But in Python, it's very simple as line number 2. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another value here. Test value. You can type anything you want. So what I have done is I have created a string value in this case. Previously it was a number, now it's going to be a string. String is always with quotes around it. This is also a string in Python. Single quotes. Let's run and see what's the output. No surprise, it is this value. This can have a lot of special characters. So I'm going to type a couple of special characters. It may not make any problems, but not all special characters. String can contain certain amount of special characters. But on the other hand, if you put such special characters, in the variable naming, so it starts making problem. So these are not allowed. So it is always safe in any programming language, including Python, just stick with letters, capital or small, and numbers with underscore. We cannot put space. So we will try space next. Again, this is unhappy. So I'm going to copy this to here. So we can have numbers in the name of the variable. We can have underscore and we can have letters, capital as well as small letters. In many programming languages, other characters are possible, but I recommend you stick with this. If you use just the letters, numbers, and underscore, you will have a habit of creating language agnostic variable names, which works in most of the programming language, including Python. So stick with letters, numbers, and underscore. That's my recommendation for a variable naming. So we'll be seeing variables left, right, and center throughout the programming. Right now, one more thing I would like to show you before we wind up is changing the value of variable. So right now this variable has this value. Now I wanted to make it a different value. So I'm going to copy this statement and I'm going to assign a different value. Let's put it 200. And now I'm going to print it again. Let's see what we're going to get. So as we might have been expecting, we got 200 for this particular line and this value for this particular line. So it's like a bag to which we have removed this item and kept this item. And again, we are using it here. Like that, we can write any number of times and read any number of times from a variable. So it's just like a bag which can be used infinite number of times. And that happens in programming always. In fact, most of the programming is always reading and writing value to different variables. So it's very important to understand.